So for today's breakfast bite, I have with me Bryony Baker. Hello, Bryony. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very well, thank you, Nathan. It is Bryony, not Bryony.
Oh, sorry.
Um, no, that's okay. I know it's an unusual name, and I've definitely had worse. I remember I was in America, and a guy thought my name was Baloney.
Oh
Um,
dear.
Totally different thing. So yeah, it's Brian. It's like the boy's name Brian, but with an E sound.
Okay.
But I'm very well, Nathan. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. So, should we jump straight into the breakfast bite? What do you have for us today, Bryony?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, well, following on from what Pete shared last week, I think he shared that here in our church in Life Church Lancashire, which is based in Burnley and serving the region of East Lancashire and beyond, we've been exploring the compelling account of the early church. And it's found in Acts chapter 2, sort of begins there and other passages. And our series that we've been looking at as a church has been called Jesus People. And we've been exploring who are we as a people, as the people of God, as a collective of individuals who are following Jesus. And I'd love to read for you again the passage that Pete read last week, because this passage has got so much to give.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's Acts chapter 2, verse 42 to 47. It says, "They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved." I think anyone who's part of a local church would have to say that if that was what was written about your local church, it would be a good day.
I would.
It would be a good report. And I think there's so much for us to learn from this passage and from other passages in Acts. But for me, it's even just the first three words. There's so much to reflect on. It says they devoted themselves. And just thinking of their context, this is a community of people who are forging a new path. It's all very new. They're working out what it means to follow Jesus. They are Jews who believe that this Jesus is the Messiah they're waiting for. And of course, not all the Jews thought that at that time or now. And so they're this new fledgling community, and they've recognized who Jesus is. They've recognized what he's done. They've seen him crucified and resurrected to life. They've heard these stories. They've heard these accounts. They believe that he's overcome death and sin once and for all and made resurrection life available. And so there's so many ways that they could respond, but their first response is that they devoted themselves. And I just love that. I think it's such a compelling phrase. And I think it's always interesting with the Bible when not just what it says, but what it doesn't say. You know, it doesn't say that they organized themselves, although that was needed and that would come. It doesn't say they turned up out of habit or obligation, which maybe for some of us, that's how we find our relationship with church or our relationship with God sometimes. Or it doesn't say they expected someone to do it for themselves, for them, you know, that they delegated the responsibility for their spiritual growth to someone else. It says they devoted themselves, and it talks about the things they devoted themselves to. But I think this word devotion is just so compelling, so inviting. And I think for me, it could probably define it as commitment fueled by deep affection. Sometimes we're committed to things, but our heart isn't in it. But it's like the commitment, but it's fueled by this deep affection that comes from within, like a deep love and loyalty that moves me to action and is displayed in my action, and like a relationship that overflows into every area of life. And I think for me, that's really says something about how just a really important way to understand church. That because I think sometimes it's easy for us to fall into the trap of like church, whatever we mean by that, whether that's a Sunday gathering or a small group or a missional expression. Small church is when I do the devoted bit. That's like the slot in my week where I'm devoted. Or even actually when I go to church, someone else does it for me, like the person leading worship or the person preaching or the person running kids ministry. They do it for me or my family. And that's when I do my devoted bit. But actually, I think if we saw church as each of us in our daily lives are devoting ourselves and committing ourselves to Jesus, and then we come together on a Sunday or a Thursday night or a Wednesday afternoon, and it's this like explosion of devotion that just spills out into each other and encourages each other and builds each other up, inspires each other, and then we're kind of sent back out to the rest of our lives to live these lives of devotion. I think that's actually a really beautiful way to see the church. And I just love this phrase at the start of this passage. They devoted themselves, that they didn't expect someone else to do it for them. They didn't turn up out of habit or obligation. And I think that's just such a challenge, such an inspiration, and an invitation for us today to live lives where we're taking responsibility for our walk with Jesus, our relationship with his church. And I guess that's maybe something just to leave our listeners with this morning. Just a good question to reflect on maybe throughout this day and this week. You know, what are the ways in which we're taking responsibility for our relationship with Jesus? Or are we expecting someone else to do it for us? Because the model of the early church is that they devoted themselves.
Great. Thank you, Bryony. That's a really good thought for us to think about. You know, are we devoted ourselves, or are we allowing other people to devote themselves to God on our behalf?
Yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you. That was a very good breakfast bite for the wake-up call this morning.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah, thank you. Look forward to hearing another one soon. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me, Nathan. Bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.